Hi guys, Mark here. Welcome to Nomad Stays update again this week. I am in a different part of France. I'm in the Champagne region today. Champagne region of France. We're in the town of Troyes, or Troyes as it's written in the English mechanism. It's just gone 2 o'clock in the afternoon here. Shops are starting to close. Beautiful old town. They close obviously for their 2 to sometimes 4 p.m. siestas and so forth. The shops have been doing a little bit of lunchtime trade. We've just had a lovely meal, a lovely Thai restaurant. The bars, the restaurants and things are all going very nicely. And you can see there are masks everywhere, obligatory pretty much through this whole town. So Troyes is about 60,000 people and famous, apart from some beautiful old architecture, you can see some of this stuff behind me, famous for about 8 different cathedrals and churches just in the old town. You can see the signs, 2 people in the shop at a time, masks obligatory. Situation normal, people walking around the streets with their masks on. This week, this becomes even more noticeable because we've seen a very big increase in infections throughout Europe. Yesterday here in France, set another record, about 50,000 new infections for the day. That was on top of a couple of 42,000 days, so quite a lot of people in the last week. That comes on the back of the French government doing a magnificent job at testing. Testing rates, 1.3 million people tested last week alone. They're trying to get on top of this. They've released their app again. There's a new EU app where the different countries are plugging in together. But as you can see, social distancing is still a little bit hit and miss. Masks are everywhere. You can see the groups of people that are combining around. Masks are everywhere. Social distancing, not so much. This area of Troyes is quite low on the infection rate. It's about 10 people infected for every 100,000 people. So one of the better regions in France, although it is registered as a red region. I was talking with a colleague on the weekend in Germany. He said, "Oh, aren't you supposed to be locked down in France?" I said, No, we've got curfews. So I said, but I just checked, the stats for you are sort of 3 and 10 times higher than what we're facing. He said, yeah, but we could never shut the borders or gates. It goes against the Constitution, which is why Germany doesn't do it, and they've had to respond in a different way with some extreme tracking and tracing. But here in France, we have a new curfew. Came in a few days ago. It's 9 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. In the last couple of days, we've also seen Spain introduce an 11 o'clock curfew and Italy introduce a 6 p.m. curfew. So Italy going back into fairly big lockdown. 6 p.m. means that the cafes and bars are not going to open in the afternoon. France, it's still going good. We were out at a pub last night, had an early meal relatively. It was still quite going well. The bars and restaurants were doing 1 turn only of the tables. So, probably not their normal business, but as you can see, the tables are quite well spaced here in the outdoors. The weather, cold for me, being a Queenslander, 13 degrees at the moment, but a lot of French still sitting outside. Obviously the healthier part of the day, being outside in the fresh air. Probably the colder weather sending people indoors, more family reunions, school holidays, things like that, has created this increase in infections. The economic consequences are still coming through quite strongly, however. Hospitality still losing jobs. Big players, big hotel groups, big online travel agencies still losing players. A little bit of consolidation still occurring in the startup scene. Smaller startups without much money at the moment are emerging, combining things. We're seeing a bit of shuffling by the major players, so it's causing a bit of change in who's doing what in the marketplace. You've probably seen that Airbnb are going through with their IPO, their launch, pretty much to raise, from what we've been reading, about $3 billion in order to pay down $2 billion worth of debt they took out earlier this year at something like a 10% interest rate. So for them, it's a way of cutting down on their expensive interest bills while they consolidate, and the world spends the next couple of years getting over or learning to live with this disease in all seasons. Good news for Victorians in Australia. Finally, the state of Victoria has opened up the restrictions in the country areas. The city of Melbourne, not so much yet, but hopefully the next couple of days will come through. For those that haven't been tracking the Australian scene, they have chosen largely to take a very strong view on things and try and eliminate and suppress the virus completely. So Victoria had their first zero infection day yesterday. After a reduction over the last couple of weeks, it was enough for the Premier to give cautious advice about opening up parts of their lockdown, which has been going on for about 4 months now. People obviously getting pretty stirred up about things. So as you can see, France is still beautiful, people still out in the streets, things are happening as per normal, tourism's going on, prices are still quite low, and being replicated around a lot of Europe. Eastern blocks over in Bulgaria, different states are going through some additional restrictions at the moment. Again, winter in Europe is bringing down all sorts of additional pressures on the governments. Border openings are still there, although these PCR tests are needed very intensely now, crossing the borders in some places. I went up to Switzerland there on the weekend. No problems crossing the border or coming back. We had our cards ready. We're in an area or a department or a state, as they are departments, they're called in France. We coming from an area that is okay to enter into Switzerland. Not all of them are, but some of them certainly are. Reason being is that the border areas have some 100-odd thousand French workers that cross over and work in Switzerland each day. And the Swiss love their money and their economy and have prioritised a healthy balance between human health and economic health for the country, and things were going very well. Geneva is still an expensive part of the world. It's beautiful, great weather, and lots of people out and about. Have a look at some of this architecture. Beautiful activities and things behind me. This is the centre of Troyes. Oh, and there's Linda, my co-founder, with my shopping, and our Chief Happiness Officer at Dakar, very much enjoying another part of France as we go and explore the Champagne region. I'm going to wind it up there today. Thank you again for watching and getting the latest update. Probably the only other thing to mention is a lot more countries opening up for Americans. This week's newsletter will talk to that point specifically, and which is really quite handy if you've been stuck in America for months on end. With that, keep an eye out on Nomad Stays. We've got new properties coming on board. I think we've just opened up one in Venice this last week. Croatia's going very well. Parts of Africa. You know what? I think we're up to 40 countries at the moment. So check us out. Join up. Have a look at your next stay. It's all happening around the world. Cheers for now.